Welcome to episode 444 of Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I am sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live recording streams on Discord, or if you listen on the podcast or YouTube feeds, or on the Trouble Minds radio network, KUAP, Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of 2 episodes of the show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Michael Strange and Trouble Minds Radio comes on. I always want to thank Michael Strange, as well as Liam Martin, host of the Exiled Minds podcast, for producing the shows and putting them up on the station. If you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others, and rate and review it on your podcast platform of choice. Also, I've written some paranormal fiction and nonfiction books you can check out over on Amazon. And I also have a Patreon page if you'd like to get one extra episode of true paranormal stories from the web per month starting in August. You can get that by signing up on any of the tiers over on that page. And also I have direct donation links for if you prefer not to do the subscription option there through so that's through PayPal and Venmo. And all support is appreciated, never expected. But there are expenses excuse me, in terms of equipment and research materials and travel expenses. Again, I'll be going to the Mid-Michigan Paracon later on this year, November 4th and 5th. That's a Saturday and Sunday, and that's in Mount Pleasant, Michigan at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. And I'll be there just to check out my first Paracon, basically, and report back to you all. And if I'm able to get any recordings of people sharing their true experiences, then I'll do that, and whatever else I'm able to record there. So that should be fun. And yeah, so thank you all for your support however you are able to do that. So I have some stories here to read as usual, and we'll go from there. Thank you all for being here and listening. And so let's see here. Let me get to the stories. This first one says, let me see. There it is. Okay. This says, while in college, some friends and I were visiting late at night and realized there was no public transportation available. I asked a good friend to give me a ride home on his motor scooter. We visited a little longer and then headed home. We started our journey home around 1 or 2 a.m. on empty and quiet roads. We got to an area with no houses, only widely spaced trees. Despite the late hour, the moonlight provided sufficient visibility. While talking and laughing, we suddenly heard a woman's loud laugh as well. Both of us instantly got quiet and felt a chill. The laugh appeared to come from behind me, despite being on a moving scooter. We quickly looked around, but found no one nearby. Not even animals. We joked nervously about hearing the laugh, and agreed it sounded like it came from behind. Feeling uneasy, my friend drove faster to leave the isolated area. My friend was going to have to return using the same road later, so I am sure they drove fast. Even after more than a decade, I still remember this experience as one of my creepiest and most unexplained encounters. So that's a neat story there, and excuse me, that's not the first time. Every once in a while, that something like that will pop up in a story where there are people talking wherever they're at. Sometimes in buildings, sometimes outside. The the setting isn't really as important there, even though it is odd that that happened while they were moving. But people will be talking and laughing, or even just talking, and there'll be laughter that comes through, or that they hear, and it seems to correspond to their conversation, and it makes you wonder: is is that the case of some spirit or entity there that is hearing everything that's going on, and somehow, for whatever reason, through environmental conditions or whatever, their laughter at what is being said is able to come through, and they hear it, even when maybe whoever is there didn't mean them to hear it. It's hard to tell, but again, like I said, I've heard stories like that before. So that's always amazing to me because that just makes you wonder, how often are there other beings just around, and most of the time we don't sense them or hear them or see them, but then once in a while some things just come through. I wonder if it's partly to do with emotion, maybe when there's some kind of strong emotion going on there, even if it's a positive one of laughter and sort of just enjoying oneself, the company of others, if that maybe will allow sometimes that kind of a thing to come through. Of course, you hear a lot of times in horror movies or novels or stories or whatever, when there's laughter, it's all automatically supposed to be evil. But I don't think that's always the case. I don't blame the writer and their friend for being startled. But it's, again, just doesn't. They didn't say it sounded like evil laughter. It just sounded like a woman laughing nearby, almost as if they were traveling with the people that were traveling somehow. So, really neat story there. Just if you think about, what if they happened to pass someone right at that moment and just happened to hear them laugh at what they were saying. Especially, I don't know how much noise that scooter was making when it was driving. If it was quiet and it was easier to hear them talking, the people talking, then that would easily explain that as well. So just neat story there. I thought that was sort of a fun one there to start off with here. And again, like I said, doesn't sound like anything else happened. I don't blame them for being freaked out, but no, nothing else going on there. So, yeah, neat story. Getting on to the next one here. This one says, I grew up in an unassuming council house in the UK. The neighbor claimed that the house was cursed after my father passed away, which had happened with previous tenants as well. One night, after my father's funeral, I couldn't sleep and decided to walk around my room. While looking outside the window, I saw a face, or a mask resembling the ceramic masks that my mother collected, possibly Venetian style. I quickly felt a sense of unease and moved away from the window. Later, my mother called out to my brother, mentioning that she had seen a black mass resembling a t-shirt moving across the hallway, which was in the opposite direction of my bedroom. I am trying to figure out what I saw and wonder if anyone has had a similar experience. And that's where that story ends. Now, the odd thing about that one is a while back, I had another story where the writer, the witness, saw 3 masks floating in the air all together, or at least the apparition of them. And so I wonder how that might be something maybe to do a show on, is the apparition of masks. I never heard that before, except for in these couple of stories here. This one and then that one I just mentioned. But and obviously there are, I'm sure there are rituals and significant meanings behind the various masks that cultures use for whatever they're used for. So I'm wondering now about maybe doing a show on that, looking into that more. Sort of a masks and the paranormal kind of a show. Maybe that could be. I haven't heard anything about that before. So, but and then they had this shadow figure. Now, I don't know about curses. I've heard mixed things about them. They do or they don't exist, or it all depends on the intention of everyone involved. I don't know. It seems like if you have a place where families spend many years and they live there and then they move on, it seems likely that, especially if they're there for who knows how many years, someone in each family may pass. And so it might not be so much a curse as it is just timing of everything. Again, I don't know, and that the writer doesn't seem to have much more information other than just the one neighbor's claim. Not to ever dismiss anyone, but without more information, it's hard to know much more about that aspect of it. But at the very least, it does seem like there's activity there at that house. And I'd wonder what other activity there was. Does the neighbor know more about other paranormal activity that happened at the house before this current family? Is that why they're saying they think it gets cursed? A lot of questions there. Obviously, no way to get answers, but neat story there. I would wonder as well how much else happened after these encounters as well there. So, but again, I think I'm going to have to look into that, masks and the paranormal. I think that could be a fun show to do at some point. Moving on to the next story here. Let's see. Alright, this one says, my grandma used to live in the same apartment above my parents. This one is kind of written weird, so I don't know about this one, but it says, my grandpa passed away in the bedroom that my parents moved into later, which was 1 month before I was born. After my grandpa had passed, my grandma moved to the apartment where I currently live. Her new bedroom is in the same spot as her old one, but one level up. Currently, my family and I use Grandma's old bedroom as storage for her belongings and furniture since she passed away last year, I'm sorry. Last month, I heard crashing noises and the sound of the bedroom door opening late at night. Thinking it was my father cleaning up the room, I checked it, but realized it was midnight and everyone was asleep. It turns out that the heavy mirror in the room had fallen over, which could be explained as a normal occurrence. I'm guessing they mean through vibrations and things like that. But the door, which was closed tightly, had opened on its own, despite the closed windows in the room. Also, I recently saw a shadow moving quickly down the hallway from the same room. So that's the end of that story. Sounds like I don't know, with the mirror moving, if something moved through it, again, going with the idea of mirrors possibly being portals, which I do think is a possibility, um, then maybe the force of that transfer could have knocked it over. Uh, Hard to say about anything else besides that. I mean, there are reports of doors opening and closing, obviously, on their own, or at least appearing to do that on their own. The fact that there was a shadow figure seen at some point after that sounds like maybe that place has some activity, whether it's connected to the mirror or not. It's possible. They didn't say that it broke, so also that would mean that it would still be intact, which means it could still be some kind of a portal, especially if it's an older one. I think in some cases, the older the mirror is, the more energy can be attached to it just from passing through it for as long as it's been around. And again, but that's not to say that current mirrors can't have paranormal activity surrounding them. I had one experience with that in my own bathroom mirror where I just had to go in there one night, but I did not, for whatever reason, I did not want to look in that mirror. And normally I don't have that problem. I'm just go and do what I have to do and leave. And if I look at the mirror, that's fine. But this one night, as I've told the story before, I went in there and took care of business, and then I left. And the whole time, I just made sure that I did not look at the mirror. I don't know why. It wasn't a really negative feeling. I just felt like there was something there that I didn't really want to see or deal with. So I don't know, but sounds like there was some activity in that room, whether it's because of the passing of the family members there, the grandparents there, them passing in that place, or because of the mirror, or both. It's hard to say. But I guess, like I always say, I'd be curious about activity there after that, and or before that. But it doesn't sound like they don't mention any other activity before that. So, but yeah, I do think mirrors can be sort of their own portable hotspots for paranormal activity. So, moving on to the next story here. Let's see. All right, almost there. One moment. All right, sorry about that. Nose is bothering me. All right, here we go. This one says, I am an IT contractor and recently worked in a Fortune 500 company building during an equipment refresh. The old building had a reputation for strange occurrences. The third floor was left alone as much as possible because it was considered the creepiest, although it wasn't the entire floor, just one area. No one felt anything weird upon entering the dimly lit floor. Once you exited the elevator, there was a short hallway that led to a window on the left and the main area on the right. The interesting part was the second left turn after the short hallway. Meeting the family, and they have that in quotation marks, was like dodging someone while turning a corner, but no one was there. The family consisted of a middle-aged mom and dad, and then middle school-aged boy from the early 1960s. They appeared lost and didn't fit the workplace environment. The encounters happened unpredictably and only occurred about 1/3 of the time. Some coworkers refused to go on that floor after encountering the family. So that's where that story ends. It's a really neat description of paranormal encounters with the same thing over and over again by multiple people. They don't ever say apparition. They don't ever say ghosts. They just sort of describe them as almost people in a way, but that are only there part of the time. And I sort of like that about that story as well. Because now it is odd that they seem lost. I wonder if it's a time anomaly of some kind. Maybe it's not so much that they're lost. It's just that the place maybe suddenly changes appearance for them, and they're not in maybe what is their apartment building in their own time or their home. Or it could be spirits. That's always a possibility. I don't ever rule that out. But maybe even residual energy, sort of this recording of previous events. Especially if I'd be curious if each sighting is basically the same, where they repeat their movements the same way every time people encounter them, then that might lead me to think maybe it's a residual, sort of just an image of the sense of these people, but it's not any. There's no consciousness there. But again, it's hard to know. But it does sound like they're out of place in that building. But if it's a large enough building, and of course the writer doesn't say the history of the building. If it was ever an apartment building of some kind, or and again, maybe it's not. It hasn't been yet, but maybe it will be. It's hard to say with that. But it sounds like multiple people are having the experience, which is always amazing because then that sort of, in the minds of a lot of people, that lends credibility towards it in a way. And I've talked about that before with what used to be my grandparents' house, where there are multiple people that had multiple sightings of the same thing over the years, and didn't find out until we all talked about it years later. And then turns out we basically found out about who it could have been, who we were pretty sure it was, that was in that house, which was, of course, the original owner of that house. So a lot of possibilities there with that one. But it doesn't sound like anything else happened. That's also, I wonder, that leads me to wonder about it being more of a residual. If there's nothing else happening other than that one same sighting over and over again, even if it's not every time, then maybe that does explain that. Possibly. Again, I don't know. But yeah, neat sighting there, and I like, again, just the way the writer there described everything, how they didn't never use any words that were the usual ones, ghosts, spirits, apparitions. They don't use any of those words in that story. So yeah, neat one there, and that's all I have time for today. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.